Hello everyone and welcome back to Age of Nagash, which is a channel dedicated to Age of Sigmar. Now, in this video, I'm going to have my first proper look at the Battletome for the Nighthaunt. So, this is going to be a look at me seeing how am I going to start to build my army I want to build for them, like I've mentioned in my last recent videos. And the thing about this, guys, because like I said, this is my first time reading through the Battletome and me thinking what will be good for the army, what are the best, allegiance abilities, command traits like spell laws, their lanterns they get, and artifacts. So what I'm also going to ask you guys is, because like I said, this is my first time properly reading through it, I'd like you guys out there to put a comments down below in this video, during you're watching it or after you're watching it, particularly if you've got knowledge of the army, if you've played a few games with them and you think I may have mentioned a few good points about the army, but actually there's a couple of better things you could do instead. Please let me know that down in the comments, and it'd be a really great way for not just me to learn the best parts of the army, but for everyone who wants to get into the army. So like I say, this video is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to ask you guys for a little bit of help there. Sort of asking your knowledge would be really appreciative, just in case I missed something. So what I'm going to do is going to start with the allegiance abilities. So of course you get all of these. The first one, Awe of the Dead. Subtract 1 from bravery characteristic of enemy units while they're within 6 inches of any friendly Nighthaunt units. So of course that's going to be a good one. That's just a flat -1 to the bravery. The second battle trait is Deathless Spirit. So what this does is roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to a friendly Nighthaunt model from a unit wholly within 12 inches of your general or a friendly Nighthaunt hero. On a 6+, that wound or mortal wound is negated. So this is the very typical sort of death save that we've came to know and love with death. Legions of the Nagash get it, generic Grand Alliance death gets it, Flesh Eater Courts get it, and now obviously Nighthaunt have got it. So that's good. They have always had it Nighthaunt, but it's good that they've still kept it. And then the next battle trait is from the Underworlds. They come. Instead of setting up a Nighthaunt unit on the battlefield, you can place it to one side and say that it's set up in the Underworlds as a reserve unit. You can set up one unit in the Underworlds for each unit you set up on the battlefield. At the end of your movement phase, you can set up any of these units more than 9 inches from any enemy models. This counts as their move for that turn. Any units which are not set up on the battlefield before the start of the 4th battle round are slain. Okay, so I know they had something similar to this in their last Legion abilities, but again, it's still good they've got this. It might have been changed a little bit since then, but it's just giving you more options to be able to deep strike in the game, and not just at the start, but also in the middle of the game. Of course, you can't do it towards the late end of the game, like deep striking to capture objectives and stuff like that. But you can still got at least 3 turns to be able to do it. So it has definitely got its uses. And the nice thing is you can do it with any of your Nighthaunt units. Of course, it needs to be the number of units you can set up in the Underworlds has to be the matching units that you've got, on the table in the deployment. But it means that you can set up, things like bigger models such as, your Mongols, your Black Coaches, heroes, or you can set up smaller things, like Chainrust Horde, etc. Okay, then on to the next battle trait is Feed on Terror. Now it says, each time an enemy unit fails a battle shock test, pick one friendly Nighthaunt hero within 6 inches of that enemy unit. Heal 1 wound that has been allocated to that hero. So yeah, that's just a nice, flat, easy way to generate, wounds and heal wounds there for your heroes. It is obviously going to be dependent on what sort of army you're fighting. If they've got high, bravery compared to if they've got low bravery, such as the Skaven, etc. However, the Nighthaunt have got plenty of ways to make the enemy minuses to bravery, so I think you would get this ability off quite a few times. And then the next one, Wave of Terror. If you make a unmodified charge roll for a 10+ for friendly Nighthaunt unit, it can fight immediately after you complete the charge move. This does not stop that unit from being picked to fight in the combat phase of the same turn. Okay, so firstly, it is relatively hard to get off this unless you're re-rolling your charges, which there are command abilities out there for that. So yeah, it is quite good. The only thing I would say is don't try and rely on it too much, but when you do get it, it's going to be obviously dependent on the unit you've got. It's going to be amazing because you'll get to attack twice with it in the same turn, and you obviously get to hit the enemy before they can hit you back. And if you only charge in one big unit, and you get the 10 plus to make the charge, they make their attacks in the charge phase, and then it's your turn obviously, and that's the only unit you've got in combat, so you're going to attack with it first. You've attacked the enemy unit twice before they get to swing back, and that can devastate some enemy formations and their tactics, and just really their units and models in general, quite honestly. And then the last battle trait we've got is a battle trait, but it's a command ability, so it's a little bit different. So it's called Spectral Summons. You can use this command ability at the start of your movement phase. If you do so, pick a friendly Nighthaunt unit that is on the battlefield, remove that unit from the battlefield, and then set it up wholly within 12 inches of your general and more than 9 inches from any enemy models. This counts as their move for that movement phase. Okay, so I think this is quite situational. There might be some really good tactics out there for this command ability already. I'm unaware of that, but I think for me it sounds quite narratively as well, because they are literally special summons. They're calling their minions to their sides to protect them. It could also be if you've got really late game where you've got one objective you really need to hold, and you've literally just got your your spellcaster, and this objective is, like I say, right at the back of the field, and you've got your spellcaster, just sitting there. He's just like a little wizard, and you think, right, okay, he really needs help here. Just hold it for one more turn, because the enemy's come to try and take it, and you've got 10 Chainrust Horde or something on the other side of the battlefield. You can just pick them up and put them in front of this little wizard, just to give him a protective barrier, just so he can hold it one turn. Obviously that's really situational, but just sort of thinking of ways where this can be really good and game changing. So yeah, take a picture. So obviously it's a command ability, so it's going to cost a command point, but there might be situations where it is essential to do. I'm unsure. Okay, so that is the battle traits for the Allegiance ability, and now we move on to the command traits. And what I will say about this is, obviously, the most powerful heroes you do have in this army are all named characters, and then all the sort of heroes you have that are not named characters are not massive beat sticks. They're not if you look at a Blades of Khorne army where you've got lots of bloodthirsters that are not named characters, and they can all take command traits, so you can make them horrific monsters. You're not really going to do that so much in this army, so that's just something to bear in mind here. But anyway, so I'll start with them. So command traits. The first one is Hatred of the Living. You can reroll failed hit rolls for attacks made with the general's melee weapons unless the target has the death keyword. Obviously this is again situational. It depends really. If you're fighting a death army, or if you're fighting a anything that isn't a death army. If you know what army you are going to fight, so if you're playing at your local store and your opponent and what army they're taking, etc., and it's obviously not death, this command trait could be quite useful. But if you're playing at a tournament, you don't know what armies you're going to come up against. Death is pretty popular these days, a lot more popular than when I first started it, and I imagine quite a few other people first started it. But yeah, definitely became more powerful, so in tournaments they're more represented, so this command trait is going to get less use. Well, if you're playing a death army and you've got this command trait, it's not going to be used at all. And then if you take that aside, you think you're just playing against just your standard any other army that's not death, I'm not a huge fan of this ability, mainly because the like I said, the heroes within the Nighthaunt are mainly not like I said, beat sticks and horrific monsters. They are supportive, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I think supportive heroes are very good, so you might not want to buff their attacks too much, because at the end of the day that's not really what they're for, and there are a lot of ways in the Nighthaunt army to get rerolls to hit anyway. There's at least one way, so yeah, I don't think this is a very good command trait in my honest opinion. Right, then we'll move on to the second one, which is Terrifying Entity. At the start of the enemy movement phase, roll a dice for each enemy unit within 3 inches of this model. If the roll is equal to or greater than that enemy unit's bravery characteristic, that unit must make a retreat move in that movement phase. Okay, so I'm not really a big fan of this either. I mean, it depends again what armies you're fighting. If they're low bravery armies, this might come up because you've got minuses to their bravery with many ways within Nighthaunt. So it might be useful for really high bravery armies. there might be a way. You know, if you're playing against, you know, other death armies or demon armies or seraphim armies, there probably is a way to make them at least -4 bravery. I don't really have much doubt about that. Within the Nighthaunt, you can do that, or you know, maybe even -5. However, you're going to put a lot of effort into trying to do that and just trying to make an enemy unit retreat. I know that could be good because that means the enemy's having to retreat if they're already in combat with you, and then obviously they can't you know, charge in later unless they've got an ability that allows them to. Like, you know, funny enough, Skaven can do that. But no, I think you'll be putting in too much effort into trying to get this off, and unless it's, you know, in a really situation where you need to get it off. And I mean, there are other situations, like of course the Nighthaunt, if they get that charge for 10 plus, means they get to charge the enemy, then attack the enemy, and then obviously attack them in the combat phase, so making the enemy retreat out of combat, so then your turn you can charge them. So of course can be good, but no, I'm not a big fan of this. If it was 2d6, I think that would be, you know, pretty good. You know, that might be overpowered, not too sure, but 1d6, I think there are better command traits out there, quite honestly. And then we move on to the third one, which is a lingering spirit, and this simply is add 1 to the general's wounds characteristic. So yeah, this could be good because, like I said, your heroes in this army, even the named character ones, I was going to say bar the named character ones, but even the named character ones don't have the biggest wounds. I mean, the named character ones have, what, 7, and then the other ones have 5, is it? I think, you know, the Knight of Shrouds might have, yeah, the Knight of Shroud has 6, you know, if he's on a steed, because obviously the horse makes him a bit bigger. But all the other ones, just looking at it now, only have 5, you know, at the most. Some of them have 4, so yeah, it could be useful to make them a bit more survivable. But I think there are better ones out there still. Right, then we move on to the fourth one, which is Spiteful Spirit. Roll a dice each time you allocate a wound to the general that was inflicted by a melee weapon. On a 5+, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound after all of its attacks have been made. So yeah, this is useful, you know, if you're expecting your general to be in the thick of the fighting and to be hit with a lot of weapons. However, I think obviously you can't put this on one of the bigger heroes, of course, because they are the, you know, Nighthaunt named characters. But again, like your smaller heroes, you know, bar the Knight of Shrouds on his mount, haven't got the biggest bases, so you know there's not going to be loads of enemies piling around them, attacking them with loads of weapons. But the other side could be, it's just, you know, something like, I don't know, a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon is attacking your little Khan Wraith, and obviously he can be, you know, his base can be in range of your Khan Wraith to do the attacks, and you can damn well sure that he's going to put a lot of damage into your little Khan Wraith. But yeah, I'm just not a really huge fan of this one, because even if you know, let's look at, put the Khan Wraith aside, let's look at the Knight of Shrouds on his mount. That is your hero that's not a named character in your Nighthaunt army that has the most wounds. So let's say he takes 7 wounds flat, and then you roll, you know, 7 dice to try and get your, you know, mortal wounds directed back at that, you know, big nasty zombie dragon we just talked about, and you want those 5+. Now, I'm not an expert at maths, but if you roll, you know, 7 dice, you're going to average about, what, 2 5+ on those dice, 2 or 3. Like I said, I'm not an expert at maths, but it's going to be something like that. So you're only going to do about 2 or 3 mortal wounds back to that nasty zombie dragon or whatever has just killed your, you know, Knight of Shrouds. So yeah, you're only going to do like that many mortal wounds back. And yeah, of course, it might not mean that, you know, in this situation Knight of Shrouds is dead outright, because he can ignore, you know, wounds and stuff on a 6+ anyway. But I really am not a big fan of this one, because you have nothing that's got so many wounds in this army that be able to withstand combat for such a long time, be able to take this command trait, in my honest opinion. Okay, so then we move on to the 5th command trait, which is Cloak in Shadow. So what it does is subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made with missile weapons that target this general. So I actually think this is one of the better ones that I've read so far. It's just nice and simple, but it's just going to mean that the enemy's having a harder time to try and snipe your, you know, your heroes, because bear in mind that your only heroes that can take this are obviously not monsters. So the enemy, you know, if they try and shoot your hero when he's, you know, got that lookout server rule going on, he's already going to be, you know, -1 to hit, and then plus this one, he's going to be -2 to hit, and it's going to really start making your enemy really not want to shoot down your heroes, because there's not much point in doing it, especially in Nighthaunt, where even if they manage to get some of their shots through, and then if they've got a really powerful rend going on, it's not going to come into effect. So they're probably just going to start targeting your, you know, your other stuff, and, you know, maybe even your chaff and things like that. So yeah, it just makes your general a lot more survivable, I think, because it's not just that subtract 1 from the hit rolls, it's also going to deter the enemy from shooting your general as well. And then the 6th one is Ruler of the Spirit Host. At the start of your hero phase, you can pick a friendly Sunbolt Nighthaunt unit within 9 inches of this general and return D3 slain models to that unit. The returning models must be set up within 9 inches of this general. So I think this is a pretty good one. It's just, you know, an automatic D3 slain models to that unit. And bear in mind, it's not, you know, D3 wounds you're returning to that unit, or one of the similar other things that Nighthaunt and Death has got going on, you know, like with the grave sites as an example. This is D3 models to that unit. So I actually think this one is the best one out of the command traits. And then depending on what army you're fighting, closely followed by the Cloak and Shadows. The other ones I'm not a huge fan of, in all honesty. I definitely think these are the 2 ones you're going to want to go for. And then I think the Ruler of the Spirit Hosts is going to be generally the best one. This is just what my opinion is, and this is what I'm going to be taking forward when I'm looking to build this army. So those are the command traits. Then we look at the spell laws. So it says you can choose or roll for one of the following spells for each wizard in the Nighthaunt army. So obviously, you know, unless you're wanting to do it randomly, most people are just going to choose them. And the lore which these spells come from is the lore of the Underworlds, and the first one is Soul Cage. Soul Cage has a casting value of 6. If successfully cast, pick an enemy unit within 12 inches of the caster that is visible to them. Until the start of your next hero phase, that unit cannot retreat. In addition, until the start of your next hero phase, that unit cannot fight in the combat phase unless all other enemy units that are eligible to fight have already done so. So yeah, this is quite good. This is just, you know, going to stop your, if you're in range, of course, the biggest enemy threat in terms of, you know, damage output and stuff, one of their units. It's just going to hinder that enemy unit. Could be quite severely, could, you know, not play much of effect, but I think that's quite a good spell to, you know, have in the bag if you need it. Right, okay, so moving on to the next one is Spirit Drain. Spirit Drain has a casting value of 4. If successfully cast, pick an enemy model within 18 inches of the caster that is visible to them. Roll a number of dice equal to that model's wound characteristics. For each 6+ that model unit suffers 1 mortal wound. I'm not a huge fan of this one. And that's because, obviously, you know, 1 wound models you're only going to roll 1 dice, and that's a 1 in 6 chance to it. Even if you pick, you know, a monster, I think most monsters have 12 wounds, you're going to, on average, do 2 mortal wounds. The casting value is not high, to be fair. It's only a 4, so you can't really argue with that. And the range on this spell was good, but nah, I'm not a big fan of this one, to be honest. But then again, I'm sort of still thinking that Arcane Bolt is still D3 more wounds, and I was going to say just do that one because it's a lot better. However, that has changed now, unless obviously you're cast on a 10 or more, I believe, or if you're a bloody Stormcast, you just get to do it really good anyway, because I absolutely despise some of their things. But anyway, back to Nighthaunt. Yeah, not a huge fan of this one. Again, it could be better than, you know, an Arcane Bolt, but I think there are better spells to choose from. Okay, moving on to the third one, a Lifestealer. Lifestealer has a casting value of 7. If successfully cast, pick an enemy unit within 12 inches of the caster that is visible to them. That unit suffers a D3 mortal wounds. For each mortal wound suffered by the enemy unit, you can heal 1 wound allocated to the caster. So yeah, I think this is good. This is basically a short range but more powerful Arcane Bolt, and it's also going to, you know, heal wounds back to the caster. It reminds me of, I think it's Vile Transference for the Vampire Lore spells, but this one's a little bit different, and it heals wounds back to the caster rather than I think it was a friendly model within 6 inches of that enemy unit you picked. But no, this one's still good, particularly if, you know, your casters, you know, towards, you know, the back in your own territory, and it's not really under threat from, you know, melee weapons and, you know, from the combat phase essentially, but it's been peppered with enemy fire so often, and it's, you know, wounds on it are getting chipped away, so it's good for it to, you know, be able to heal back those wounds. Yeah, I think this could be quite good, but also, you know, bear in mind we're onto the spells now, so these can also be given to your named characters. So you've got, you know, Lady Olinda, which I hope is pronounced correctly, you know, the Mortarch of Grief, or you've got someone like, you know, Riknar the Grim Hailer, which again I hope is pronounced right, and then Curtis Valian Tan, the Craven King. So yeah, I do apologise if I have just butchered all of those names, because I'm pretty sure I did just butcher the last one, so I'm just going to call him the Craven King from now on. But anyway, back to what I was talking about. You can give these spells to those guys, so they're going to be more in the combat sort of role, and it's going to be a way for them to be able to regenerate their wounds a lot more effectively. So we then move on to the next spell, which is the fourth one, and that is Reaping Scythe. Reaping Scythe has a casting value of 4. You successfully cast, pick one of the caster's weapons. Until the start of your next hero phase, you can reroll failed hit and wound rolls for attacks made with that weapon. So again, this can be used in one of the main characters, so it could be pretty good as your main characters are, you know, your best combat guys in this army in terms of heroes, and some of them have got some pretty good attacks. So I could say that is a pretty good one. However, there are quite a few reroll to hit and reroll to wound, you know, mechanics within the Nighthaunt army, particularly to reroll to hit. So there might be better spells out there, but a lot of those abilities rely on being in range of certain other buffing heroes and stuff like that. So it's not always going to come off. So this spell could be particularly useful, and the casting value is only a 4. So yeah, that's pretty nice. And then move on to the fifth one, which is Shade Mist. Shade Mist has a casting value of 6. If successfully cast, pick a friendly Nighthaunt unit wholly within 12 inches of the caster that is visible to them. Subtract 1 from wound rolls or attacks that target unit until the start of your next hero phase. So this is a particularly good one, I think, especially as obviously you can put it on the caster himself. So one of your, you know, bigger heroes you're going to maybe want to put in combat, going to make him that much more survivable. You can put it on a unit that's struggling as well, and it doesn't specify it's, you know, shooting that gets subtract 1 from wound rolls, or, you know, melee weapons that subtract 1 from wound rolls that target, you know, the unit that has this spell on. It just, you know, it affects both of them, so they're going to be -1 to wound to shoot and -1 to wound to hit you in the combat phase. So yeah, I think that has its uses, that one. And casting value 6, not too bad at all, not particularly high. So I quite like that spell. And then the last spell, being number 6, is Spectral Tether. Spectral Tether has a casting value of 6. If successfully cast, pick a friendly Nighthaunt hero within 12 inches of the caster. Heal D3 wounds that have been allocated to that unit. So again, that's quite a nice simple one. It's just a way to regenerate wounds, which is going to be very useful in a, you know, Nighthaunt army or in a Death army where you already have got ways to regenerate those wounds. And pair this off with, you know, Life Stealer. It could be particularly useful. So yeah, I quite like that too. I think for me personally, the 3 best spells you've got here is Life Stealer, Shade Mist, and Spectral Tether. And I'd say that the Soul Cage could have its uses, but I think it's quite a bit situational. So yeah, I think those 3 are the best ones there, and they're the ones that I'm going to be looking to take forward with my Nighthaunt. Right, so then we move on to the artifacts of power. So the first ones are Weapons of the Damned. Now, the first one of this is Shadow's Edge. Pick one of the bearer's melee weapons. If the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with that weapon is a 6, that attack inflicts D3 mortal wounds and the attack subsequent ends. Do not make a wound roll or save roll. So it's just saying it does D3 mortal wounds instead of, you know, normal damage essentially. Yeah, that could be useful. Obviously, it depends on what you put it on. But like I say, that might be a thing quite a bit, I'm going to say, with these Weapons of the Damned. Because like I said earlier, your heroes that are not named characters in this army are not particularly really strong in combat. I mean, they're not bad, but, you know, there are certainly better, you know, other heroes out there. So if you really want to try and buff them up in combat, I think you might be wasting it. You might just want to use them as the supportive heroes they are. So yeah, I mean, it's not bad, this, you know, Shadow's Edge, but these Weapons of the Damned, probably not going to be a huge fan of them, because simply you can't give them to particularly really good combat heroes. Right, okay, so Reapers of Sorrows is the next one. Pick one of the bearer's melee weapons. Before attacking with this weapon, roll 2d6. If the roll is higher than the target unit's bravery, that weapon rend characteristic is a -3 for attacks made against that unit. Again, this sounds quite cool because you can get -3 rend here for your attacks, which is very rare in Age of Sigmar. But again, you're not going to be able to do so much damage potential. So I'd rather probably take one of the other artifacts. So I'm probably going to read through these weapons of the Dam quite quickly. The next one, Balefire Blade. Pick one of the bearer's melee weapons, add 1 to that weapon's damage characteristic. And this one's pretty simple. You give it to a Knight Shroud on his, ghostly mount, whatever it's called, and then he's making 3 damage. If you give it to a Lord Executioner, and that ability he has for if he targets a enemy hero, and isn't it if he gets a 6+ to wound, I believe. I'm just looking it up now. Yeah, so it says if the unmodified wound roll for an attack made with a decapitating great axe is a 6, add 2 to the damage characteristic of that weapon for that attack, which is the Lord Executioner's weapon, which is one of your heroes. So if you get it off against a hero, he's making 3 damage. Given this artifact, he's making 4 damage. But I think that's obviously relying on a lot of the luck of the dice because it's an unmodified wound roll of a 6. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this. I mean, you give it to just like a little guy the enemy's not even going to think about worrying about, which is the Calm Wraith, because it's just such a little 4 wound model. However, its attacks do 2 damage each, so giving it this one does 3 damage now. Will go quite unnoticed until he releases it. However, unfortunately, what I thought when I first looked at this is that Calm Wraith, when he gets a 6 to hit, he does mortal wounds instead of his normal damage, and I thought his mortal wounds would be whatever equivalent to his damage is, but unfortunately it's just a flat 2 mortal wounds, so this Balefire Blade would not add hugely to his damage potential. That's like a little sneaky attack thing you could do. So it's simple, but again, like I say, your guys aren't amazing in combat. And then the next one, number 4, is called Slitter. After picking the bearer to fight, before they pile in, you can pick one enemy model within 1 inch of the bearer and roll a dice. If the roll is greater than that model's wound characteristic, it is slain. I think this is probably the best one I've read so far for the Weapons of the Dam, just because, like I've been saying the whole time, they're not the best in combat. They're not bad, but they're not amazing, and that's mainly for 2 reasons. They're not particularly expensive in points, these heroes, and also they play a much more supportive role and have got, even if it's not supportive, it's a different role than just charging into the enemy and doing as much damage as possible, and that's not bad. It's just a different play style. So what I like about the Slitter is it doesn't matter how good you are in combat. What it means is that you have the potential to kill like 4 wound models, and that could be like a few small heroes, like such as like Skaven heroes, or even Nighthaunt heroes in that fact, with the Tomb Banshee and the Calm Wraith. It's good obviously for just killing normal 1 wound models. 2 wound models can be very effective, and I think it's pretty good because you can also pick the model. It's not saying pick a unit and then roll a dice, and if you get over their wound characteristic, that a model from that unit is slain, then your enemy gets to take away the model. You can do this on things like their champions, of units, their banners, their special weapons, their musicians, anything like that. It's a good way to surgically strike to get rid of those certain models that are the best ones within the unit. So yeah, I quite like this one. And then move on to the number 5, the Headsman Judgment. So pick one of the bearer's melee weapons, add 1 to the hit and wound rolls for attacks made with that weapon. So yeah, it's the same old story of me saying that I don't personally feel like these guys are, known for how fantastic they are in combat, so I think there are better things you can pick. Again, it's not bad, but for what you can put it on, I don't think it's worth taking. And then the number 6 artifact is Shrieking Blade. Subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons that target the bearer. So yeah, it's not bad. Make sure the bearer of this artifact a bit more survivable, particularly if he's a general, and I don't know, you really want him to stick around. Basically, it could be useful, but I think again there are better artifacts out there. And when I say there are, I mean I hope there are. They're not, they're not bad, these artifacts. The Weapons of the Dam. I just think, as your heroes in Nighthaunt, as like not the named characters ones anyway, and probably them as well. They're mainly supportive, and I think that's really what you should focus on and try and enhance how good they are at being supportive. I don't think you should try and make them, well, naturally great and being supportive, and then also kind of good at being in combat as well. I think, just stick to what they're good at, and that'll be the best way forward. So with the weapons of the Damned, my two ones that I think probably the best are the Shrieking Blade, the Slitter, and probably the Balefire Blade as well. I think they're probably the three best, and I think the best one out of all those is either the Slitter or the Shrieking Blade. Okay, so then moving on to the Relics of the Underworlds. So the first one here is Cloak of the Waxing Moon. The Deathless Spirit's battle trait negates wounds inflicted by weapons that are allocated to the bearer on a 5+ instead of a 6+. So yeah, this makes your bearer, more survivable. I think this is pretty good. Yeah, I'd say it's worth considering. Then moving on to the next one is Pendant of the Fell Wind. So you can add 3 to normal moves made by friendly Nighthaunt units that are wholly within 12 inches of the bearer at the start of that normal move. I particularly like this one. This is one that was also in their allegiance abilities when they first got them in the General's Handbook 2017, I believe it was. And I think this has huge benefit. I've talked about this one before because it's going to affect Nighthaunt in general, because it's a Nighthaunt keyword. Units that are within 12 inches, and yeah, it's wholly within 12 inches, so yeah, that's a little bit annoying, but that's the way how things go these days. And again, your Nighthaunt's moving particularly fast. I mean, you stick this on a Knight of Shrouds on its mount, or you give it to a, the smaller version, basically, which is a Dreadblade Harrow, and you send them off with Hex Rays or something like that. That's very fast anyway. These, sort of squad of units are going to be moving incredibly fast. They'll be moving, what's that? I think they'll all be moving 15 inches, like as their normal move. And bear in mind how good it is. The Nighthaunt unit charges on a 10+, they get to attack straight away. It starts building up a lot of extra benefits. And then even if you're not using on the really high movement units, you're using on chain rust hawks, stuff like that, remember everything in your Nighthaunt army, as far as I'm aware, can fly. So that does add huge movement potential, because like I said, not even your fastest unit, just take the chain rust hawks. They move 6 inches. If they're in range of this, they're now moving 9 inches, and they can fly. So they're flying over buildings, flying over terrain, stuff like that, flying over enemy battle lines to get to the enemy units behind. And they're more pressure units, and maybe not with chain rust for this case because they're big blocks, but things like smaller elite units that you might take, like one of the Banshee units, stuff like that, can be very useful and just makes them move that much further. So yeah, I am a particularly fan of this. Always have been since I read it a few years ago when it first came out. So yeah, that's probably going to be one of my favourites, but I will obviously read through the rest. So looking at the Dreadbolt Ring, that's the third one. When the bearer fights, if they inflict 1 or more wounds with their melee weapons, you can inflict D3 mortal wounds on 1 enemy unit within 3 inches of the bearer after all of the bearer attacks have been made. So yeah, I mean, like I was saying with the last ones, talking about the weapons of the Damned, your heroes, that aren't named characters aren't really, beat sticks, so it's not much point trying to make them really heavy in combat. But this one, you only need to do 1 wound, and then you're going to do D3 mortal wounds, and not necessarily on the unit you've attacked. You can pick another unit within 3 inches. Let's say there was a hero that was out of range of your, your weapons to be able to attack them, and they only have a couple wounds left. You think, right, okay, I'm going to attack these guys. I'm going to definitely do 1 damage to them, 1 wound, whatever, because they've got a really bad save. And then with the D3 mortal wounds I'm going to generate, I'm going to put it on that hero that was just out of my range, because they've only got a couple of wins left, and you could, the perfect storm scenario, you could get that off and it would be amazing. But, it is situational, but it could be useful. The next one is Mirror of Screaming Souls. So at the start of your shooting phase, roll 2d6 for each enemy unit within 8 inches of the bearer. If the roll is higher than that unit's bravery characteristic, it suffers 1 mortal wound. Not a huge fan of this because, 2d6... you could get quite high numbers on there to beat, the enemy's bravery, and like we said, Nighthaunt have got ways to make the enemy bravery go down. But within 8 inches, it's not a huge range, and this is indicating that this hero is going to be in the thick of it in the combat to try and get as many enemy units within range of 8 inches as possible. You know, that's what it's indicating here. And because that might not be the best place for your heroes, some of them do well in the thick of it, you know, like a Lord Execution and stuff, making like enemy heroes nice one to hit and stuff with his ability. But for most things, I don't think that would be the best place for them. So I'm not a huge fan of this. And 2d6, like I said, it could be good and it can be very swingy. You know, you might roll it sometimes, just get a double one. And, you know, unless you've really made the enemy minus 3/3, that's not going to really be particularly good. And it's only 1 mortal wound again. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that. Alright, the next one, number 5, is Nighthaunt. The bearer becomes a wizard and knows the Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield spells, as well as 1 spell from the Lore of the Underworlds that we just talked about. They can attempt to cast 1 spell in each of your hero phases and attempt to unbind 1 spell in each of the enemy hero phases. If the bearer was already a wizard, they can attempt to cast 1 additional spell in each of your hero phases instead. So of course, obviously, you know, this is useful on guys who aren't wizards, and then if they are wizard, they can cast an extra spell that makes picking from that list of spells you have to choose from the Lore of the Underworlds that much bit easier. And I think that's going to be more than likely the case because your generic wizard you have within the army of the Nighthaunt is the Guardian of Souls, and his abilities he can do are pretty damn good, so you're probably going to want to take one of them into your army anyway. So yeah, I think that artifact could work well on him, or if you for some reason can't fit one of them in your army and you still really want a wizard, obviously, in case you get Mystic Shield off and all that sort of thing, it could be particularly useful on another hero. Okay, so the number 6 is Covetous Familiar. At the start of the combat phase, roll a dice for each enemy unit within 3 inches of the bearer. On a roll of 2+, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. That's easy enough to get off, and it's fairly reliable, and doing 1 mortal wound might really make a difference. But I think out of all 6 of them that I have read, I am always a fan of these, if it's, relics, artifacts, if it's, weapons, whatever it is, which is basically the artifacts the army can choose from. I'm always a bigger fan of ones that buff the rest of your army rather than just make that hero particularly better. So yeah, for me it's definitely going to be dependent on the Felwind. I think that is the best one. It adds the most to the army. So yeah, for me that is definitely the best. Basically, when I'm reading all these artifacts, whatever army it is, I always basically first just scan across all 6 of them, how many there are, and look for the bold letters within the text if they have, because if it's a bold letter it could be a keyword, and in case of the Pendant of the Felwind, when I scrolled across it, it did have the keyword Nighthaunt, and I think straight away, right, great, this is going to benefit not just the bearer but also other parts of your army, which it does so very well in theory anyway. So yeah, I definitely go with Pendant of the Felwind for that, I think. And then we move on to what we have, the Infernal Lanterns. So Guardians of Souls with Nightmare Lantern only. So the first one is Light Shard of the Harvest Moon. Once per battle at the start of the combat phase, the bearer can use this artifact. If they do so, you can reroll failed hit rolls for attacks made by friendly Nighthaunt units that are wholly within 12 inches of the bearer when they attack in that combat phase. So generally, I'd say this is a pretty good, artifact to take. As I've just been saying, it really does help the army. However, as you do have another hero that sort of does this already, which is, the Spirit Torment has, a very similar ability, which is, reroll failed hit rolls of 1 for, friendly Nighthaunt units within 12 inches of the Spirit Torment. I mean, I know this artifact allows you to reroll all failed hit rolls, but because if you're taking a Spirit Torment, you're sort of benefiting from that already. Not as good, but sort of doing it. So if you're not taking a Spirit Torment, I think this is particularly good. And then if you are taking a Spirit Torment, but you want to sort of spread the reroll and failed hit rolls wider, I think this is good, particularly if that's the thing you're sort of going for with the army, to really sort of guarantee getting those hit rolls. Okay, number 2 we have the Witchlight Lantern. Add 1 to casting rolls for the bearer. yeah, this is a simple one. I don't want to cast him and make him a better wizard, but it's not really benefiting the army, so for me, I'm not going to be focusing on that one too much. And then the third one, a Beacon of Nagash. If the bearer successfully casts a special lore spell and is not unbound, instead of the normal effects of the spell, you can either heal d6 plus 3 wounds that have been allocated to the target unit, or if no wounds have been allocated to that unit, you can return a number of slain models to it that have a combined wound characteristic equal to or less than a d6 plus 3. I'm a big fan of this because I think this is a great way to keep key essential models in your army alive, but also to keep things like units alive, just being able to summon back more models to that unit just to make sure it doesn't die. Things that could really make regeneration of this army that much more powerful, because his spell normally being able to do that and have basically d6 wounds come back in terms of models or healing a unit or a model. Getting that plus 3 just makes it that much more reliable. Like, I think, right, I'm guaranteed to get plus 3 here, so I'm guaranteed to get 3 Grimghast Reapers back. I'm guaranteed to heal 3 wounds on my Craven King, something like that. I think that's a really, really good artifact. So we only get 3 for the Infernal Lanterns, and I think my favourite probably is the Beacon of Nagash, just because if you have a bad combat phase or a bad enemy shooting phase or whatever, and you think, crap, that unit or that model has just taken that much more damage than I wasn't expecting, really need to heal him back up, boom, you can. Particularly how Nighthaunt are fairly survivable anyway, the fact that they don't take a rend, so this can just make it that much more survivable. So again, I would say the Light Shard of the Harvest Moon, rerolling those failed hit rolls, is a good one as well, and it does benefit your whole army. But I think the Beacon of Nagash is just that much more strategic and surgical. That can be very, very useful and really save a unit from stuff getting wiped out. And I would probably say the Light Shard of the Harvest Moon is better because it benefits the whole army, almost, if it's within range. But because the Spirit Torment sort of does that anyway, I think my favourite one would be the Beacon of Nagash to really heal back those wounds and bring back those models. Right, so now I've gone over all the battle traits, command traits, spell laws and artifacts of power. I'm not going to dive into any more right now, just because unfortunately at the moment time is a bit pressing and I'm unfortunately a little bit short of it. So what I'm really going to ask you guys as a favour is if you could tell me from your experience what you think is good of Nighthaunt, really give me sort of advice with building up this army. And also, if you think quite outrightly you disagree with anything I said in this video, because like I say, you've got the experience and stuff, please let me know in the comments down below so I can learn from your experience, and not just me but anyone else who is interested as well. So yeah, that's it. I am really thinking with the Nighthaunt, because I know a lot of people saying like you're building up your army that Grimghast Reapers are the best unit there is out there. You take full unit sizes of them, you can take 90 and they can be really good. But to me that sounds a little bit boring, just taking 90 of the same model or the same unit type basically. So I just wondered if there are other ways. A way I was looking at doing it was the Shrieker Host, so with all the Banshee units essentially, that battalion, I think that could be really good fun. Or another one I was looking is the Death Riders, and I say that because I've already got 10 Hex Wraiths to build and paint, and I think that battalion is quite good as it enhances your ability to be able to charge, and by doing that enhances your ability to be able to attack straight away after you charge for those units in that battalion. So yeah, those are the sort of things I was thinking about, and like I'd say, I'd like you guys to let me know what sort of units you think are good in the Nighthaunt army, so I know what sort of direction to go in. What I've got already is 10 Hex Wraiths to, like I say, build and paint, and they are really just from extras from when I wanted to buy some Mortarks, and I bought the 2 Start Collecting Skeleton Horde boxes for those Mortarks, and then I ended up with 10 Black Knights or Hex Wraiths just sort of on the side. So I've got those. I've also got the Soul Wars box set, so in total I've got a Knight of Shrouds on mounts, which I've already built and painted, a Guardian of Souls, a Spirit Torment, a Lord Executioner, 4 Grimghast Reapers, I think, and I can't remember how many of the Gravewrath Stalkers I've got. I think it's either 4 or 5 you get in the Souls box, and then 20 Chainrasp Horde. So what I would, like I say, really appreciate if you guys could do is let me know out of all of that you think, you know what, you don't really want to focus on the, I don't know, the Gravewrath Stalkers because they're not particularly good, or the Hex Wraiths, or, you know, really the Chainrasps, they're not all that. And to be honest, I don't really want to have too much of a Horde army, so I'm sure like loads of Chainrasp Hordes could be really good, but I don't think I'm going to want to do that just with time. And like I said, so out of that, I'm a little bit stuck with the Soul Wars box because the units are so odd variation of size. It's like the Grimghast Reapers. The problem with that is I only get like 4, I believe, in that box, and they come in units of 10. So it's just like, what's all that about? It means I'm just going to have to buy another box of them, and then be stuck with 4. I'm not going to, you know, build and paint essentially. So that's a little bit of a shame. And then yeah, what I've also got painted is a Khan Wraith and 2 Tomb Banshees. So yeah, in total, like I say, I've got Khan Wraith, 2 Tomb Banshees, the whole contents of a Soul Wars box, and 10 Hex Wraiths. So you can let me know out of that what is you think is good, what units I'm not going to want to bother with, and what units, what is a good way to build up this army, essentially from your experience in a sort of competitive fashion, because that's probably what I'm going to go for. But if it is just all Grimghast Reapers that I've been told about, I don't know if it's going to be a huge fan, 'cause like 90 of them on the board, I don't even know if I want to paint that many, in all honesty. And like I said, something I'm looking for is the Streaker Host, so that's things like all your Banshee units, so you know your Mirworn Banshees and your Dreadscythe Harridans, is that how it's pronounced? I think are really awesome models, and if you can let me know particularly on them what you think about them, and if they are good in the game or they're not so good, that would be fantastic. So like I said, guys, and also with the Black Coach, because it's a fantastic model, isn't it? So I just wondered how good it is in the game, and of course I can read the rules and stuff like that, but obviously, you know, Theory Hammer and, you know, actually playing with the models and getting games with them is completely different. So that's what I really would appreciate from you guys, if you could take the time putting in the comments down below your experiences of them, or even if you haven't played a game but you've been looking at them for quite a long time, you think this is a strategy I want to take with these guys, this is why I want to build the army like that, please let me know in the comments, and together we can all learn something new, and that would be really fantastic. And I'd like to know all this stuff before I start building loads of models, because if the Soul Wars box is not particularly good, I'd happily go out and buy some more boxes and stuff to really start the army off. So yeah, that's the end of the video. So like I said, guys, if you disagree with my thoughts of the artifacts and stuff like that, please let me know down in the comments why you disagree, and let me know what are the better options there. I'd really appreciate that. And then more importantly, if you could, again, like, let me know your experiences and stuff so I can learn from it, that would be fantastic. So like I said, this video is a little bit different because I'm sort of asking you guys on your, you know, advice as well, rather than me just talking from my experience. That would be fantastic, and then, like, as a community we can all learn together. So again, I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys, and if you have, please like, subscribe and comment down below, as that does always, you know, encourage me to make as many videos as I can. This channel it's not about me at all, it's about the community as a whole, and, you know, you guys are the channel basically, and I really hope you guys realise just how much I'm appreciative for all your support at the moment. It's been fantastic, and like I say, I hope you enjoy the content. If there's anything you'd like me to change or do anything differently, let me know in the comments, or if there's any sort of videos you'd like me to make, again, let me know in the comments. So finally, I thank you guys very much for watching this, and remember, until next time, Nagash is all, and all is one in Nagash.